Welcome to the deep dive. We are really thrilled you're spending part of your day with us.
Absolutely.
Whether you have this playing in the background as you prep for a strategy meeting or you're just looking to sharpen your own personal frameworks, you are definitely in the right place.
Yeah, we've got a great one today.
We do. Today, we are taking a really granular look at the mechanics of wealth. And I want to be clear right up front, we aren't talking about overnight liquidity events or, winning the venture capital lottery.
Right, no get-rich-quick schemes here.
Exactly. We are analyzing an incredibly pragmatic piece of source material. It's called the Millionaire Blueprint, 6 Habits for Building Wealth.
And the methodology behind this source is really what makes it worth our time today. The authors didn't rely on abstract economic theory. They went directly to the source.
Which is so rare.
It is. They conducted structured interviews with exactly 200 self-made millionaires just to isolate the behavioral patterns that consistently drive financial growth over time.
200 verified case studies. So our mission for you today is to take that qualitative data, completely bypass the standard financial platitudes you've already heard 1,000 times, and extract the actual operational habits these individuals use to scale their net worth.
We want to deliver rapid, actionable knowledge that actually respects your time.
Right, and respects your baseline understanding of personal finance. Because if this blueprint makes one thing abundantly clear, it is that sustained wealth generation is, well, it's an outcome of daily, highly operationalized routines. Okay, let's unpack this. Could you frame the overarching thesis of the source material before we break down the individual habits?
Yeah, absolutely. The overarching thesis is fundamentally about shifting from a reactive financial posture to a proactive one. When you aggregate the data from these 200 interviews, you see that these individuals just do not rely on massive windfalls.
Right.
I mean, in a modern business culture, there's this outsized focus on the billion-dollar exit or,
Right.
the perfectly timed market short. But the reality mapped out in this blueprint is deeply iterative.
It's boring, almost.
It is. It's about the compounding effect of small, calculated behaviors executed relentlessly over decades. So our goal today is to examine 6 of those specific habits so you can pressure test your own daily routines against them.
That sets a perfect baseline. Let's look at the first pattern the researchers identified, which centers on goal setting. The blueprint notes that 80% of the self-made millionaires in their cohort set specific, long-term goals. But the differentiator is that they focus on them daily.
Yeah, and what the data really reveals here is a shift in operational behavior. Setting a long-term goal is the easy part.
Oh, sure.
Most professionals do that during their annual review. But the daily adherence is where the blueprint notes most people fail. It requires taking a macro objective and distilling it down into a daily behavioral metric that you simply cannot avoid looking at.
Right. The blueprint emphasizes that consistent incremental steps beat sporadic big efforts. I was thinking about it like a GPS routing a road trip.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, you don't just put in the destination and close your eyes. You have to make hundreds of small, continuous steering adjustments based on the immediate feedback from the road. It's the difference between merely reacting to shifting market trends and proactively following a highly operationalized personal thesis.
And it requires writing down exactly what you want to achieve.
Exactly. I imagine the cognitive load of having to face your long-term financial thesis every single morning acts as a forcing function for those daily micro decisions.
It acts as an absolute filter. The source explicitly details that this process involves writing down the exact qualitative and quantitative achievements desired, anchoring them to a hard timeline, and then relentlessly reverse engineering the daily, weekly, and monthly inputs required.
So it's not just, I want to be rich.
No, it's, I need to make this many calls by Tuesday. When you have that level of daily operational clarity, it becomes so much easier to decline a meeting, pass on a mediocre investment, or ignore a distracting new trend.
Because you know instantly whether or not it serves the established thesis.
Okay.
And that discipline to filter out the noise naturally requires a really sophisticated understanding of what is actually happening in your industry, which leads directly into the second habit, a commitment to continuous learning.
This one is huge.
It really is. The data shows that 88% of the interviewed group dedicate a strict minimum of 30 minutes every single day to self-education. And they are primarily parsing through dense material on industry trends or personal development.
And the 30-minute metric is fascinating because it is not about passive consumption.
Right, they aren't doom scrolling.
Exactly. We aren't talking about scrolling through a financial news feed or reading sensationalized headlines. The source highlights that this time is dedicated to structural learning. It's like compounding interest for your skills.
That's a great way to put it.
These individuals are actively working to spot market inefficiencies and broaden their cross-disciplinary knowledge. A tech founder might spend that 30 minutes reading behavioral psychology, or a real estate developer might study demographic data trends.
What really stands out in the blueprint is the underlying mindset driving this habit. It requires a profound level of intellectual humility.
Yes.
These individuals operate under the assumption that their current knowledge base is perpetually degrading in value. To maintain an edge, they have to view themselves as incomplete.
They don't know everything.
Exactly. And they treat that gap in their knowledge as a systemic risk that needs to be mitigated daily.
Because arrogance is a massive liability when managing a portfolio or scaling an enterprise.
Yeah.
The Dunning-Kruger effect, where people overestimate their competence, that destroys wealth just as fast as bad market timing.
Oh, without a doubt.
The moment a seasoned professional believes they have fully mastered their domain, they stop adapting. The half-life of relevant technical and market knowledge is shrinking every single year. So the millionaires in this study use that daily 30-minute window to effectively hedge against their own obsolescence.
And that intellectual humility seems to map directly onto how they manage their lifestyle, which brings us to the third habit. Yes, habit 3. Live frugally to reinvest, because you can't aggressively reinvest in your mind or your portfolio if you're deploying all your liquidity into your personal overhead.
Right.
The authors actually distilled this into very specific budget guidelines. They suggest capping housing costs at 25% of net income, food at 15%, entertainment at 10%, and vacations at 5%.
Those are tight margins.
I have to pause here, though, because in today's macroeconomic climate, particularly in primary urban markets, keeping housing costs to 25% of net income is incredibly difficult. Does the blueprint offer any context on how these individuals executed that?
What's fascinating here is that the source doesn't present these percentages as comfortable or easily achievable norms. They are presented as strategic constraints. For many in the study, hitting that 25% threshold required aggressive trade-offs. That might have meant house hacking early in their careers, intentionally relocating to secondary markets to capitalize on geographical arbitrage, or, and this is common, simply refusing to upgrade their primary residence as their income scaled.
So it's very intentional discomfort.
Exactly, because the goal isn't just to hoard cash for the sake of being frugal.
Right. The math on those constraints is what really drives the point home. If you cap your housing, food, entertainment, and vacations at those recommended percentages, you are only consuming 55% of your net income.
Which leaves a massive 45% margin.
A 45% savings rate. The psychological discipline required to maintain that, especially as your peer group starts succumbing to lifestyle creep, it must be immense.
The discipline is immense, but that 45% margin is the entire engine of their wealth creation. The blueprint categorizes that remaining capital as raw material.
Raw material to invest.
Yes. It is systematically deployed into traditional tax-advantaged investment vehicles, like maxing out a 401k or Roth IRA, or very frequently among the entrepreneurs in the cohort, it is funneled directly back into their own operations to capture market share.
By enforcing those strict lifestyle constraints, they ensure they always have dry powder available when an asymmetric opportunity presents itself.
Precisely.
But you cannot execute on those asymmetric opportunities in a vacuum. Capital needs direction, which frequently comes from external perspectives.
Which bridges us perfectly to habit 4.
Exactly. Habit 4, build power relationships. The blueprint leans heavily into the concept that proximity is power. And here's where it gets really interesting. According to the data of the millionaires who actively utilize mentors, an astounding 93% credited those specific relationships as the primary catalyst for their ultimate success.
A 93% attribution rate is just a staggering statistical consensus.
It really is.
It reinforces the reality that scaling net worth is rarely a solitary endeavor. You are limited by your own operational bottlenecks and blind spots. A mentor, or even a high-level peer group, acts as a shortcut through those bottlenecks. They provide experiential data that would otherwise take you years to acquire through trial and error.
So the application for you listening is that passive networking is completely insufficient. You have to network, like your wealth depends on it. You have to approach relationship building with the same operational rigor as your investment portfolio.
The blueprint doesn't just say, go find a mentor.
No, it requires asymmetric networking. You don't just ask a highly successful person to give you their time.
Right, you have to figure out how to provide value first. The tactical advice provided in the source is highly proactive. It outlines a strict framework for interactions.
Ah.
Be curious, ask highly specific questions, listen actively, and take notes.
And it sets a quota, right?
Yes, it challenges the reader to seek out one new, meaningful professional connection or mentorship alignment every single quarter.
4 strategic connections a year. That really strips away the intimidation factor of networking and turns it into a manageable metric.
It has.
It also strongly advocates for joining specialized professional syndicates or interest groups. The strategy is to intentionally place yourself in rooms where you are the least experienced or least capitalized person. When you normalize being around people operating at a higher magnitude, it forces you to elevate your own internal baseline.
And placing yourself in those rooms inevitably exposes you to new, larger operational frameworks, which requires you to step out of your established comfort zone. You cannot apply the insights from a high-level mentor without changing your current behavior.
Which naturally leads us into habit 5, taking calculated risks.
This is a fun one.
It is. The researchers point out a vital data point to ground this discussion. 27% of the millionaires in this cohort had experienced at least one total business failure.
Over a quarter of them.
Yeah. Risk is fundamentally baked into the equation if you are trying to jump tax brackets or disrupt an industry.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how we view capital deployment and career trajectory. For the demographic in this study, the wealthy view failure as feedback, not defeat. It's stripped of its emotional weight.
It's just data acquisition.
Exactly. However, taking a calculated risk is the exact opposite of gambling. It involves building an asymmetric risk profile. Before any capital or significant time is deployed, they ask, what is the upside, what is the downside, and what proprietary knowledge will I gain regardless of the outcome?
That is an incredibly empowering way to view personal finance.
Yeah.
And translating that into your daily life doesn't mean you need to liquidate your portfolio to fund a highly speculative venture.
No, definitely not.
The source suggests running micro-experiments. You define the downside, strictly, say, limiting your exposure to a specific dollar amount or a set number of weekend hours, and you test the thesis. You document what you learn. It could be deploying a small tranche of capital into an emerging asset class. It could be launching a lean side operation to test a market inefficiency, or aggressively campaigning for a stretch role within your current organization that forces you to learn a new vertical.
It's the scientific method applied to career and portfolio management. The 27% who experienced systemic failure didn't exit the game. They took the proprietary data acquired from that failure, adjusted their operational models, and applied it to their next calculated risk.
Because they had managed their downside.
Exactly. The failure was educational rather than terminal.
But executing these micro-experiments, analyzing failures, and constantly pushing your operational limits, that requires a massive baseline of physical and psychological stamina.
It really does.
Which brings us to the final habit identified in the source. Habit 6. Prioritize positivity and health. The data indicates that 76% of these individuals maintain a rigorous, regular exercise schedule, and the source discusses the requirement for rich thinking.
Rich thinking.
Yeah, the active management of cognitive load and staying optimistic, controlling those negative emotional states.
And this is a critical component that often gets dismissed as soft science, but it is highly functional. We are talking about the biological reality of decision-making.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, building sustainable wealth involves navigating high-stress environments. You're managing complex interpersonal dynamics and absorbing financial setbacks. If you are chronically sleep-deprived and physically compromised, your baseline cortisol levels rise.
Right.
That directly impairs your prefrontal cortex. That leads to decision fatigue, poor risk assessment, and emotionally driven portfolio management. Health is a wealth habit. It's not about vanity.
It is entirely about protecting your primary asset, which is your ability to make rational, long-term decisions. If you are physically exhausted, you are far more likely to panic sell during a market correction or capitulate during a crucial negotiation. The blueprint argues that regular exercise, even just 20 minutes several times a week, combined with adequate sleep and time for gratitude or reflection, creates a buffer of resilience.
The physical and mental resilience to bounce back from the setbacks we just discussed. A leader operating with a clear, focused mind can accurately assess the downside of a calculated risk over the long haul.
Whereas someone who is burned out just can't.
Right. A leader operating in a state of chronic physical stress will perceive risk everywhere and default to an overly defensive, stagnant posture. Health is treated as a non-negotiable prerequisite for high-level cognitive function.
So what does this all mean for you as you head into the rest of your week? Let's synthesize the operational framework we've extracted from the Millionaire Blueprint today.
It's a powerful list.
It really is. We have analyzed the system that starts by transforming vague ambitions into deeply tracked daily metrics. It requires protecting 30 minutes a day to aggressively expand your cross-disciplinary knowledge.
All while maintaining the intellectual humility to know you are always operating with a deficit of information.
Exactly. It demands the strategic discipline to live frugally, securing a massive capital margin that you can deploy into those asymmetric opportunities.
And it requires you to systematically network, source, and provide value to mentors who can eliminate your operational blind spots.
Then, it involves consistently taking calculated, downside-protected risks, all while fiercely guarding your health and positivity so you have the stamina to endure the inevitable failures along the way. The profound takeaway from this research is that building wealth is highly accessible. It's not locked behind an opaque wall of financial engineering or sheer luck. It relies on daily routines.
This raises an important question, though, and it is a final provocative thought I would challenge you to deeply consider after this audio ends.
I love this part.
If you look closely at these sources, almost all of these wealth-building habits, reading 30 minutes a day, exercising for 20 minutes, practicing gratitude, and actively listening to mentors, are actually just the fundamental habits of personal growth and well-being. So if you focused entirely on becoming the best version of yourself using these daily metrics and never obsessively checked your bank account, would the financial wealth simply arrive as a natural byproduct of the person you become?
That is a phenomenal framework to leave on. Wealth not as the primary target, but as the trailing indicator of operational excellence. We want to genuinely thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.
It's been great.
We hope we've managed to cut through the standard rhetoric and provided you with a sharp, analytical lens to view your own routines. Your actionable step today is to pick just one of these 6 habits and implement it into your routine today.
Just one.
Lock in that 30-minute reading window, map out your downside on a new calculated risk, or reach out to someone who forces you to elevate your baseline. You have the blueprint. Keep analyzing the data, keep optimizing your systems, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.